BBC Sounds. Music, radio, podcasts.
Hello and welcome to the Scottish Football Podcast, bringing you all the news, views and analysis you need. It's Thursday the 11th of April. I'm Kenny Crawford, and could Aberdeen's long search for a manager be over?
He's the best in Sweden at getting a team to overperform against invested pound.
Rangers hit out after their match away to Dundee is postponed for the second time due to the Dens Park pitch.
It's quite significantly waterlogged. When I've tried to throw the ball, bounce the ball, travel with the ball through it, it's quite clear that the ball's not travelling, it's not bouncing.
And
70 minutes played, it is now Queen's Park 0, Dundee United 5.
Yes, it's Thursday, so we'll also have our usual focus on the Championship and Leagues 1 and 2.
This is the Scottish Football Podcast from BBC Sports Scotland.
Pleased to say we've got company, and that's in the shape of Falkirk midfielder Stephen McGinn and Clyde manager Ian McCall. Stephen, how are you?
Good, thanks, Kenny.
It must feel great to know League One's all wrapped up for Falkirk.
Yeah, it's a nice feeling when you get into the business end and at both ends, the stress over your own performances, your own results and what's happening elsewhere. So nice to get it in the bag and enjoy it from just looking in like everyone else.
Good stuff. And Ian, how are you ticking along okay?
Yeah, fine, Kenny. Hanging in there.
Yeah, what result for you at the weekend? Late winner?
Yeah, I mean, it was thoroughly deserved. The second half, like everybody else, the game was dominated by a hurricane of a wind. So we probably should have been 2 or 3 up before Jordan got his goal, but it was very welcome.
Yeah, Jordan Allen, 92nd minute goal. There must have been some scenes at New Douglas Park. We'll talk about that later. Right, there's loads to get through with Ian and Stephen, but first let's rattle through the latest Scottish football headlines. Aberdeen are closing in on the appointment of Jimmy Thelin as their new manager. Thelin is currently in charge at Swedish side Elfsborg. Meanwhile, Aberdeen as a club have called Scotland's version of VAR not suitable for purpose. Rangers have accused Dundee of negligence and unprofessionalism after their Premiership match was postponed for a second time yesterday because of a waterlogged pitch. The match will now take place next Wednesday evening. The SPFL confirmed there will be disciplinary proceedings against Dundee after a 5th call-off this season. That hearing will be next week.
The Scottish Football Podcast.
Right then, first up, guys, Aberdeen look like they've finally got their man, Jimmy Thelin. Ian, is that a name that's been on your radar at all over the last few weeks or months? And what do you make of the situation?
No, it's not. Last night I was doing a bit of reading about him and I've just had to find out how to pronounce his name. But he seems to have been, I think the length of the process has been because he's the guy they want. So I really hope they get it over the line because it would be dreadfully embarrassing if they didn't now. So he looks as if he's come up as a manager the hard way, I would say the proper way. I think they lost out to Malmo in the title over there last year on goal difference only. So I can't comment. I would not comment on his personality, which I think is absolutely vital if you take a job like that. But obviously they've done their due process and he's the one they want. It's not been an ideal situation for everybody at Aberdeen. I think Peter Leaving has went in and done really well in terms of results. Like everything else, he'll be judged, and this is the old manager in me speaking, he'll be judged in winning or losing football matches. And you can talk all you want in media and to your fans, you're judged whether you win games or not, and that's how he'll be judged.
Yeah, and Stephen, as a player who's played in the top flight in Scotland, what do you make of Aberdeen's approach of looking to go with a foreign manager?
Yeah, well, he was obviously first linked, I think, even before Neil Warnock was even mentioned for the Aberdeen job, so you had a look at it and his background. Honestly, one of the first things I looked at was how long he's been managing. You hear all this about the style and stuff like that. It was just how long have you been managing, because I think you need to be a very big personality to get in there as the Aberdeen manager, with Dave Cormack as the owner, and be strong and just say, look, this is what I'm looking for. So obviously a dressing room full of experienced players, a lot signed from big money. So it's not like you're just going to be able to go in and just get rid of everyone. So I think the fact he's been managing since 2005 at a very low level in Sweden, worked his way up. So I think he's going to be strong. I don't really understand the timing of it. Elfsborg obviously been 2 games in to the season. I don't know what's going to change between now and June. It's not like he needs to finish the season at Elfsborg. But Bitten may be tempted saying, if I'm an Aberdeen player, saying, come and manage us now. We've got a semi-final to look forward to next week. Like, let's go and have a crack at the Scottish Cup before the end of the season, before you really get down to your own business. So, yeah, but intrigued by it. Yeah, obviously, losing the league so brutally at the end of last season to Malmo. But yeah, the fact he's been managing a long time gives me a bit of hope.
I think it's only Aberdeen's potentially their second continental manager, and it was Ebbe Skovdal, the Dane, back in 1999 to 2002, I think, the last time they went down this kind of route. What were you doing in 1999, Ian?
1999. I was starting out as a manager.
Clydebank?
I was my player manager at Clydebank, and in first season we got promoted to the Championship. Yeah.
There you go then, it all started well. Stephen, what were you doing in 1999, playing Super Mario Land or something?
Well, I was in Clydebank as well, but I was at school.
that makes me feel absolutely terrific, Kenny.
Well, I think we'd all hold our hands up and say that we're not Swedish football experts. So let's hear from someone who is, Robert Laul. He's a journalist for Göteborgs-Posten. He can tell us a bit more about Jimmy Thelin.
If you give him a couple of years to refine players, sell on more expensive and replace cheaply, he's the best in Sweden at getting a team to overperform against invested pound. He usually uses the 4-3-3 formation, but can switch to 4-4-2 during matches. The focus is on hard work in the defensive game with a high pressure, a quick transition game, as well as a game build up with game turns, like diagonal passes, and a shorter combination game closer to the goal. It's very professional. He has never criticized a verdict out of the respect for the referee. It is one of the things he has become best known for in Sweden. He has never complained about referees' decision in TV or newspapers or in other interviews. In interviews, he is perhaps Sweden's most boring person. He rarely or never offers anything personal. He refuses to tip tables or speculate about how matches will end or what his team will concretely succeed with. Jimmy Thelin in Aberdeen could mean the death of exciting headlines. I think the city's newspapers can retire their headline writers or send them at a long holiday to a sunnier place, because with Jimmy Thelin in town, they got nothing to work with anymore.
Interesting to hear that insight on Jimmy Thelin. Ian, how big a job will he have if it all goes through?
Well, that's a huge job. I mean, Aberdeen can't be finishing in the bottom 6 in the Scottish Premier League. They should be up competing for third place. I've seen them play. We actually played them. The first job he's got is holding on to Miovski. I think he needs some defenders. I think it's well documented he needs some defenders. I think he needs to get everybody together, because the club has been out with a 6-month spell in Barry. Did really, really well for him to clinch the job. Maybe it wasn't even 6 months. But I think the club's been a little bit splintered since Derek left, which, looking back, particularly, wasn't a hugely great decision to make. I think Mr. Cormack, the chairman, needs to get this right. I think I think his heart's in the right place. It seems to be, and he certainly puts his money in. He certainly supports Aberdeen, but I think the fans need him to get this right. It's been a number of years now since Derek left, and he's never been replaced properly. But I mean, sometimes that's hard when somebody's been as successful, and the relative success for Aberdeen, which it was. I think that Derek would only be concerned he only won one trophy, but I mean, they've got to get this right, and I think he's got to bring everybody together at Aberdeen and, reshape his squad. I don't know how big a rebuild it is, I've got to say. I think certainly defenders, it depends who stays. There's interest in one or two of their midfielders. one of their key players, Shinnie, is getting on in age. I think he's still got a year or two in him, that's for sure. So yeah, listen, it's a big job. It's a big job he's got, and all the very best to him.
Stephen, I was looking back at your career. I was wondering if at Watford, if you maybe were under Zola for a while, and if so, what do you think it's like for players when a foreign manager comes in? Do you think there's a lot of sussing out about character and personality from the players towards the manager?
Yeah, but that happens with any new manager, any new coach, Scottish, foreign, whatever. Yeah, overlapped with Zola, but Zola was the problems, and something Aberdeen don't need to worry about is the ownership. It was a mad ownership, still is a mad ownership, so they don't need to worry about that. But if you're taking that Aberdeen job, you look on the season, and you'll be watching games back. It's a team that's won at Ibrox this season. It's a team that's beat Frankfurt. They ran Celtic. They drawn it home to Celtic in Peter Leven's first game in charge. It's a squad capable of big performances. The problem, where they've let themselves down, is all the games they should be winning. So the first thing any new manager would be grinning looking at and saying, right, how do I beat the teams that I should be beating? Which is the easiest part of the job, because the squad's showing capabilities of competing at the top level.
Okay, we'll move on to another subject just now. We'll see what happens with Jimmy Thelin over the coming days. Another big talking point, we mentioned it in the headlines over the last 24 hours, and that's the Dens Park pitch. Failed an inspection for the 5th time this season yesterday, meaning Dundee Rangers didn't go ahead. It'll be played next Wednesday night. It's not a good look. Eric Drysdale, the Dundee club secretary, admitted it's unacceptable. They'll need to do some work on it in the summer. Ian, how bad a reflection on the top flight of Scottish football is this?
Well, I mean, after the kind of the Old Firm game on the Sunday, yeah, listen, it's a bad reflection, yes, but it's more a bad reflection than Dundee Football Club. I mean, even from a sporting aspect, if Dundee managed to beat Aberdeen or get a draw against Aberdeen, Motherwell beat Hibs or it's a draw, Dundee are already in the top 6 when they play them, and they would they be more motivated to get something out of the game. It also gives Celtic an advantage to go 4 points clear before Rangers play again. So purely from a sporting aspect, it's genuinely unfair. I think it's a terrible look. And I think it was young Stuart Kettlewell talked about the money that's spent on the squad when the losses were announced, and maybe $500,000 of that should be spent in the pitch. So listen, it's not good. I look at things from a purely sporting point of view. A, it doesn't look good for our league after the great Old Firm game with the high viewing figures. B, it's given other teams an unfair advantage, which is that's everything that's wrong in sport, and particularly professional sport.
And Stephen, I know that at Falkirk you obviously playing an artificial pitch, but in the top flight of Scottish football, I think 99% of people would agree you kind of are looking for grass pitches, but you need those grass pitches to be good.
Because one of the biggest problems Dundee have is they have a stadium across the road, which is in brilliant nick. And actually, I feel sorry in the whole situation. I feel sorry for Tony Dock and the players. Newly promoted team. I know how hard it is to win games at that level when you're just newly promoted. And they've got the top 6 in the palm of their hands, and they'll almost be feeling guilty getting into the top 6 because they have players like Lyle Cameron. They don't want to be playing on a sand pitch. They want to be playing a good football pitch, good football players, and they want to go and grab the top 6. Yeah, it's a totally frustrating thing. But I just think this: if we're going to vote through the grass pitches for the top league, which I think is really important, I think there needs to be some sort of ruling, someone needs to keep an eye on, right, you need to be spending this on the pitch, or you need to have X amount of staff, because they do that with the clubs, with academies. You need to have this in place, you need to have that in place. Why don't they have that for the pitch, which is what we sell to the public to come and watch games?
Kenny, I think it's important. It's important to recognise that there's an awful lot of poor grass pitches in the Premier League just now. Really poor. I mean, Brendan was going on about it at Celtic Park just recently. So, a really, really good AstroTurf is miles better than a rubbish grass pitch. A really good grass pitch is miles better than an AstroTurf pitch. But Dundee's is not the only pitch that was needing work. St Johnstone's pitch isn't great. Tynecastle's not great just now. I'd said Celtic Park was looking a bit dodgy according to Brendan Rodgers. So, what needs to be done in these aspects?
Okay, let's move on to some other things now, because I'm really keen to spend some time looking at the Championship, League One and League Two. I was at Somerset Park on Tuesday night for Ayr against Morton. While that was happening, Airdrie were beating Wraith Rovers. Fair to say, Ian, the Dundee United title chase looks like they've probably got it under their belt now with 4 games to go, 4 points clear. And a healthy goal difference as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think if they can navigate this weekend and still be 4 points clear, then obviously I think they've got a great chance. But there's always a but in the Championship. They go to Capello on Friday night. That's not an easy place. Anybody will tell you at any time, wherever Morton are in the league, and they're going through a little rough patch just now after a great run, it's not an easy place to win there. If that's a draw, if Wraith can beat Partick Thistle, the next day it's back to 2 points with 3 games to go. So I think, listen, there's twists and turns to go in it yet. But if Dundee United manage to win at Capello, there'll be big pressure on Wraith to beat Thistle. And, Thistle need a result as well to stop the charge from Airdrie. And because finishing third compared to fourth is worth, a decent amount of money.
And Airdrie a lot comfier in that 4th position now as well. They've got a 6-point cushion between them and Dunfermline in 5th. Okay, look at the bottom of the Championship, Stephen. You'll be looking at who you might be facing next season. Really tight at the bottom. We know Arbroath are cut off, but in terms of the relegation playoff spot, 4 points between Ayr in 7th and Inverness, Cally, Thistle in 9th. Queen's Park in between them. How do you think that's going to pan out?
Yeah, it's really intriguing. Obviously, you get so obsessed with if your rivals. We had it this year with Hamilton. You're almost looking at it in terms of who will be facing Hamilton as well in the playoffs. Just touching on that Dundee United, Wraith stuff. Probably because we have won the league, you could admit it. I mean, the cliche is you don't look at the other teams. But if you're a Dundee United player watching Wraith the other night in that game in hand and they lose, the energy it gives you to go to Morton on Friday, game on the TV, you don't have to win anymore. It's not a game they have to win. They can go down there just not to lose. And I was watching the Man City thing on Netflix, and the Man City players huddled round the phones watching Arsenal's late winner at Aston Villa. And it actually gave me a bit of hope in my own career, because you think even at the top they're so concerned about what's going on. Publicly they'll say they're not interested in Arsenal's late winner at Aston Villa, but you could actually see the footage of them, how disappointed they were with Arsenal's late winner, and they then go on to, it affects them, they then go on to drop points at Nottingham Forest. So you're just constantly concerned about other results. Just talking of pitches, seeing Ian McCall in the programme, the year we were at Kilmarnock, I remember their pitch, because of ground shared with Queen's Park, and the backlog of games almost ruled them out as a runner. I remember being quite concerned about them in Inverness. I didn't think there was millions between us, Thistle, and although Arbroath ended up being the kind of team in the second, ourselves, Inverness and Partick, there wasn't much between us. I remember them having that backlog of fixtures. I remember sitting on my laptop watching the game thinking, how can Docherty and Bannigan and Lawless, all these guys play on that pitch? And it ruled them out. I remember thinking what a bonus that was to our result, thinking, right, that's Thistle there, another 2 points behind us. So it'll be constantly going on with these Ayr guys, Queen's Park, Inverness. Morton will be looking over their shoulders thinking Dundee United's coming on Friday. We need to try and get something because we're getting sucked into this. The beauty of the Championship, where you're never quite far from the relegation playoff or the playoffs.
Yeah, Morton, Dundee United will be good on Friday. Louis Moulton, great form. He scored there a few weeks ago as well, midweek. A 1-0 result for United away to Morton a few weeks ago. Let's go from the Championship, drop right down to the bottom of League Two, because I'm really keen to talk about this and make sure we've got time for this, Ian. Because at the Kilmarnock-Ross County game last Saturday, I was flicking through my phone every 5 minutes to check what the Clyde-Stranraer score was. The battle of the bottom two in League Two, and you got a late win. 92 minutes, Jordan Allen header. I've watched the goal. Planted it into the kind of top left-hand corner. How far out of your dugout were you, Ian, when that dropped into the net?
Well, I wasn't. I mean, I was really calm. And as soon as the game finished, about a minute later, 2 minutes later, I just walked down and I was celebrating because, I'm very aware that it's not done yet. And that's been my focus since I went, because I mean the two teams above us are 12 points clear of us in January, and it would be, listen, it's not going to make headlines, but it would be certainly. I hate people saying it would be their greatest ever achievement, because it kind of means that you think you've created great things before, and I certainly haven't. But if we manage to pull this off, it will be significant. So it was very, very good, and we were thoroughly deserving of the win. But all we are is level, and we've dragged another 2 or 3 teams into it. On Saturday, I think the top 5 teams in the league play the bottom 5. The top 5 are all at home, which is kind of weird. So. We need to go to Dumbarton and try and win. But our form since January is, certainly the last 6-7 games is championship form. So since January, it's been good enough to certainly finish the playoffs at the other end.
And Stephen, staying with League Two, I know Falkirk have a healthy rivalry with Stenhousemuir, but was there part of you that was pleased to see them seal the League Two title? They've done really well, a good blend of a squad there.
No, our chief exec, Jamie Swinney, had a long-term connection with Stenhousemuir. So when you're having any kind of football chat, he's always quite keen to talk about how well Stenhousemuir are doing. And I know the captain there, Gregor Buchanan, played with him at St Martin, so delighted for them. And they've did it in style, because we've played Peterhead. You look at some of the squads in the league. So to do it so convincingly, a big achievement from the Stenny guys.
I think, Kenny, one thing to say about that, sorry, they're a bit like Peterhead in terms, we talk about community clubs. I know the chairman and I know a lot of the people that we trained there, and they're a proper community club. They don't just talk about it. The amount of stuff they do at that club is incredible. So it was a fantastic achievement for them.
Yeah, okay. And before we finish, I'm really keen, given that this is Masters opening round day, either of you keen in the Masters, watching the golf today? Give us your tips, Stephen.
I want Rory to win, but Scheffler will win.
Stephen?
I'm just a Sunday. Well, after the football's finished on the Sunday, that's when I'll tune in. I'm not your golf tips guy.
John would be disappointed. Your brother, Stephen.
I know they're both, John and Paul, are mad keen on golf. I've not played golf since I did my knee when I was 21, so I fell out of love with the game.
We can understand, and we'll see if your tips come to fruition. Ian, that's all we've got time for. Many thanks to Ian McCall, Clyde manager, and Falkirk midfielder Stephen McGinn. And thank you all for listening. I'm back tomorrow on the Scottish Football Podcast, when I imagine we'll be looking ahead to the weekend action. Lots of games over Friday, Saturday and Sunday. Until then, enjoy the rest of your Thursday.
The Scotland Rugby Podcast is now available every Tuesday. Join me, Andy Burke and Tom English. Just head to BBC Sounds and subscribe to the Scotland Rugby Podcast.
It's just seismic stuff.
There's bucket hats as well. Oh really? Yeah.
Is this a rugby podcast or is this a fashion podcast?
Why can't it be a bit of both?
Rugby. Let's get on to rugby.
There's a lot to be excited about.
Today's guest, John McGuigan.
Clubs are an absolute bedrock of everything Scottish rugby's about.
The Rugby Sports Sound Podcast from BBC Radio Scotland.
You cannot help but be so excited.
It's going to be the centre of the rugby universe.
BBC Sounds.